Hello, welcome to my channel, and it's time for another recent reads. I have completed 2 books, and I'm pleased to say that those books are nice books. I enjoyed them, so it's time to talk about those books. The first one that I finished was Speak by Laurie Halse, an American writer. Now, this book was a book that I borrowed from a free library at the mall beside my university, and apparently this book is sort of considered as a modern classic, a really modern classic, and yeah, I after I finished reading this book, I could see why, and originally, when I first started reading the book, I would say I didn't particularly like it because of the tone that was employed in the book. So, but after that, as I read the book, I found that the writing is very nice, and I grew to like that book more and more, all the way to the end. So this book is about a teenager named Melinda, and she just started high school. And at the beginning of this book, we see how she has difficulty adjusting to the life in high school, especially when apparently something has happened right before high school started. An event that happened at a party that Melinda and her friends attended. Now, something happened at that party, and Melinda did something that was that made her unpopular to her friends. So as a result, when she started high school, and so do her friends, she becomes an unpopular student, sort of like a pariah among her peers. A lot of her friends who used to be tight with her, they distanced themselves from her. And we would eventually learn what happened at that party that caused Melinda to do something that made her unpopular. But at the same time, we also see that what has happened at that party causes Melinda to have all these difficulties adjusting to life in high school, because that particular event has elicited this tremendous mental effect on her. And I would say the way that this book is written, particularly on the topic that it approaches, this topic of sexual violence. Okay, well, you know what, I don't think it's much of a spoiler, because I was trying hard to not say what happened at that party, but yeah, it has something to do with that. But you know what, that is not a spoiler. That is not a spoiler, because that is what this book is very well known for, how it explores sexual violence and consent. And the way that this book explores the idea of those themes, I would say it's done in a fairly both mature, but at the same time in a way that is approachable for young readers as well. The way that the tone of the narrator, basically Melinda is the narrator of this book. This book uses this kind of angsty teenager who at first glance seemed to hyperbolize everything around her, but then again, that is something that I would say a lot of us would feel familiar with, because when we were teenagers, there is this tendency to sort of view everything in a I would say exaggerated way, as if everything is the end of the world, right? But it becomes even more so with Melinda, and I would say even more justified because of the experience that she has to endure before high school and also during high school. And this book pretty much chronicles how she deals with the emotional and mental baggage that she has to deal with, sort of in order to kind of untangle herself from this particular struggle, especially considering the fact that for the most part this book illustrates how a person deals with the aftermath of a sexual violence case alone or without minimum support. So when combined with the way that this story is told, another thing that I find really interesting about this book is the structure, which is I wouldn't say it is highly experimental, but the way that the sections in this book are arranged, it feels like we are reading a chronologically arranged entries written by a teenager, sort of like a journal entry of sorts. So the sections are not arranged in such a novelistic way where you have like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, but there are all these sections linked together in series chronologically, and it kind of gives you this a bit of a claustrophobic vibe. You don't feel totally comfortable, but at the same time it also allows you to feel this kind of discomfort that the protagonist slash narrator is feeling, and I think that is quite effective in making you connect more with the protagonist. So yeah, I think that aspect is another part of the book that really helps with its storytelling. So overall, I think this is a very nice book, and I'm glad to have read it. It's a wonderful book. So I'm going to move on to the second book, and this is a book that I happen to have a copy of. Although my copy has been damaged by rain. I'm sad. I mentioned this before in one of my last two videos, I think. Yeah, this book was one of the victims. Anyway, this is Jeffrey Eugenides' The Virgin Suicides. So this is the second book that I've read from Jeffrey Eugenides. The first one was Middlesex, which I enjoyed. I gave that one 5 stars, and I would say I gave this one 5 stars too. So yeah, as you can see, this is going to be a rave session. So why did I like this book? Before that, let me talk about what this book is about. So this book is set in 1970s, I think, in a town in the United States. The town is called Grosse Pointe in Michigan, and so we have this family living there, the parents and also their 5 daughters, 5 young daughters, teenage age daughters. And basically this is kind of like the stories of how these 5 daughters kill themselves, basically. So there's no spoiler there. This book is literally entitled The Virgin Suicides, and from the get-go we know that these 5 daughters kill themselves, and naturally this event is it sends this wave, of shock throughout this suburban neighborhood, and we explore the story of these suicides through the point of view of a group of young boys. I won't say young boys, teenage-aged boys, similar age to the girls. Although we don't really know who specifically in this group of boys are telling the story, because this story is pretty much being told to us in this kind of like first person plural narrator voice. So I think that's a really interesting choice in terms of how the story is told. And basically when this story is being told, these boys have already grown up as adults, and basically they're telling this story as some kind of a flashback to us. So and I think that presents another interesting layer to this narrative style, because now we have this story being conveyed to us, this story about this shocking event involving suicides of 5 girls, through the lens of 5 grown men, not 5 grown men, of a group of grown men, but we don't know who they are exactly, on something that happened while they were teenagers, basically. So you see how they thought of the events as teenagers, but also how they think of that event as the grown man. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of interesting. Anyway, now I would say I kind of surprised myself when I read this book, because I actually didn't know what to expect. I mean, I had some expectation, okay, but I don't really want to talk in detail about my expectation, because you might have that expectation and I don't want to spoil you, because you might not, if I say that my expectation was subverted, then you would know that that expectation is not something that you're gonna get. So basically I would spoil the story for you. So if you have that expectation, I'm gonna let you have it first and be surprised later. But anyway, what I find really interesting about this story is that the scope is surprisingly wide. Now that's a non-spoilery way of saying it, right? The scope is wide in the sense that, yes, we have the story of 5 girls who killed themselves in this suburban setting. And obviously the neighbors, the people who live in that area, their friends, other people who live in that place, they're shocked by it. And there is an effect to the society who lives there. But what I find really interesting is that not only there is somewhat of a focus on the girls, but there is also the focus on the general zeitgeist of the era and how it relates to the responses of the society living there, and how both of those things just kind of interact with each other. So to say that this book is just about the suicides is not really accurate, because it's about the suicides, but it's also about more than that. So so there is definitely this kind of I would say in a way the assessment of the society's response, and how they sort of relate with the general social attitudes that was prevalent in America at that time. And I find that that way of storytelling to be quite interesting. And it definitely feels quite fresh. It makes the writing feels unique. There is this kind of stylish flair to it as well when it's done that way. So I definitely enjoyed that aspect of the book. Now, another thing I really like about this book is how characters are treated. So basically, usually I like it when characters are being really explored in a story, you know, how the author would bring us into the minds of the characters and make them feel like actual human in front of us, and we get to know them, they feel tangible, you know, all those stuff. And of course, if the author does well, then, you know, it makes the story better, right? That's what I usually like. Now in this book, it's intentionally, I would say, directed towards the opposite direction, where instead of having important characters, to be really fully fleshed, we end up with this sort of amorphous idea of characters. Now, I'm not going to talk about who the characters are, what. You might know who I'm talking about, but you know, I'm just saying, in general, this book, there's a very intentional, I would say, dehumanization? Is that the right word? But anyway, kind of like the opposite of fleshing out a character, sort of making them into this lump of human-ish entity, right? And the narrative takes advantage of that with the inclusion of things such as rumors, speculations, other characters' point of view, and so you get multiple filters. Now, not only you get the filter from the first person plural narrators, but also from the people that whose opinions and whose words they recount to us. And so in this book there are multiple layers of filters being used in order to kind of convey this totally new reality of how the focal event, the suicides, is being presented. And so it kind of makes it really interesting in the way that it also explores how a particular thing, okay, not just a surprising event such as a group suicide or whatnot, but also any event as a whole, how an event can be viewed by anyone. And we can always expect that there is going to be some kind of filter that exists, or some kind of division, a divide, or a blockage or something that happens between the observer and also the event, which is something that I find really universal. And I would say this book really explores that idea, not only through, you know, what I said just now, but also through a very nice example. Like, we know that the narrator or the narrators are a group of men, and you know, they telling their stories from the perspective of them as teenagers, right? How they view the suicide of these girls, you know, as teenage boys. And obviously there is, you know, just an example of I would say it's quite important in this book, how, because of the fact that they were teenage boys, looking at the lives and the deaths of these teenage girls, you know, now you have this kind of division between boys and girls. There is also another division that exists in this book, in such, in a way, a physical one, which these girls were isolated, in a sense, by their family. Okay, not gonna go into detail on that, but there is some kind of isolation happening. So there is a physical division, but also there's this kind of mental and gender-related division, you know, being boys and girls. And so there's, because of these divisions, there will always be like filtering of information that happens, especially when a story is conveyed or being told. And I just find this really fascinating. And yeah, and I would say that is kind of like one of the reasons why I find that The Virgin Suicides is a wonderful book. I find that it has very similar vibes to Middlesex as well. There's this kind of dark comedy tone to it, like it is a little bit irreverent in some places. It doesn't try to be like overly serious, and it definitely takes this kind of sarcastic, critical tones at some places. So that contributes to this, I would say, entertaining readability of this book. So, yeah, those are all the things that I want to say about the books that I read. Only 2 books so far, and I will return with new videos soon if I have some ideas or something new to talk about. But yeah, in the meantime, I want to say bye-bye, and I hope to talk to you guys again. So anyway, yeah, see ya, take care.